Hi, and thanks for stopping by to take a look at my review of the AKAI MPC One. For those of you that aren't familiar with AKAI, suffice it to say that AKAI has been in this business, the home studio recording and pro audio technology, for quite some time, reaching as far back as the 80s and probably before the 1980s. In the late 1980s, somewhere around 87, 88, AKAI released a product called the S900 audio sampler, which was a professional audio sampler for people that wanted professionally sampled grand pianos, drums, and other types of sampled instruments for home studio recording. And AKAI set the bar very high with the S900. Without further ado, let's get right into it and review the AKAI MPC One. Starting on the far left, we have the master volume control that controls the output of both your main outs and your headphone volume as well. I would have liked to see them include a separate output control for headphone volume, but I don't think that it has one. It's the headphone output volume is also controlled by this. So you got your stereo left and right outs, you got 1/4 inch left and right stereo in. You know, this was the first thing that I noticed when I was looking at the rear panel, was that it's maybe could be having more inputs, but I think you get that on the higher level of the AKAI MPC product, like the Live and the MPC-X. You do have recording volume for your input here. You got some trigger outputs here for triggering external synthesizer devices, sequencers, other types of products that use those small little cables. Your MIDI in and out, Kensington lock, a USB connection where you can plug this in as an audio interface, USB stick, Ethernet, which comes in handy for connecting to Splice and perhaps other AKAI related websites, and your power connection. It is using a wall wart type power, and then your push button for your power on. That's a tour of the rear panel. So now let's flip it around the other way and see what's on this side. Okay, so looking over here at the front, there's not a lot going on here, but they're still important items. SD memory card. I'm going to want to have one of these. This uses a SD-XD style card. I'm so grateful that they went with this style of card and not the micro style cards, which drive me crazy. This is so great. So manufacturers, please note, musicians don't want tiny cards that they can sneeze and blow them away into a crack somewhere, never to be seen again. Then you also have your 1/8 inch headphone type jack. And, you know, you just use any style that supports the 1/8 inch connector like that. And that's it for the connections on the front and back of the unit. There are no connections per se on the side. The sides are just air vents for the processing. The AKAI MPC One. Let's go ahead and power this bad boy up and see what it does. So I'm going to push this button on, and this is what happens when we power it up. Hopefully you can see this. It did come up to the demo page showing the different demos, but I hit empty project, and then from here we can hit browse, and right away it's going to take you to some of the drum kits and so forth that are stored on the unit. And I had one called Dress You Up by Madonna, my cover, and hit load, and this is going to load up my version of Madonna's Dress You Up. And at this point we can go back to main and see I've got some tracks showing on here. That's 16 bars, got various synths assigned to. So usually, yes, you'd start with drums. So, and also we need to come up with a name for this. So I'm going to call this intro. I'm going to make this drums. You have these modes here. The one we're looking at is kind of seems to be for drums, and so when we go to browse for drums or select a drum set, you're usually going to be in this mode with the 4 squares there. There's also another mode next to it called plugin mode. You see here you got plugins, and there's a chromatic mode. Comes up with program name here. So this is interesting. It's fairly simple, but you know, I had to kind of learn my way around this, coming from zero MPC experience previous to this. So to assign actual drums or start to look for drums, you'll see that right now if I move down here and cycle through this, there's nothing listed. So we need to load some drums in, and we're going to do that by going to browse, and here you can see that there are different types of categories, and drums is one of them. So you can pick a drum set and then audition it right here. And most of these kits will have a preview function right here. So you get the idea. You can scroll through and choose different kits and preview them. And some of these have various samples loaded in with them. So if I were to load this particular kit, you're going to see that it has samples. Once you load a kit, you have to assign it to your track, and that's what I just did here. So I had gone through and loaded using the browser button right there, and then once the kit was loaded, I assigned it to this first track of my intro in my song Empty. So now the kit is loaded and I can play it. So that gives you a little idea. If we wanted to move to something a little more simple, we could go back to the original that we were playing with. Maybe this fat kit, load that up, go to main, choose the assignment, the instrument assignment, note again the 4 squares for the drums. Here we have more traditional acoustic drum set. To begin recording a drum track, you're going to first want to check that you're at the beginning, and I found this second knob to be handy for moving along the transport. You can shuffle along your transport just using the second knob. And you might want to have metronome turned on during your recording and play. And at this point, it's just a matter of hitting the red record button and then play, and away you go. On the same track, but we're going to now overdub. So let's see what we get here. I'm going to put some tom-toms. Hear that we've got a little mistake there on the basic rhythm. So while I'm on this track, we'll go ahead and jump into this mode, which is your MIDI note editor, and we will kind of watch that scroll through. We can also pinch or zoom. Okay, so the problem was right back here. Looks like this note right there is a rogue note. So I'm going to select that, and then we'll just nudge that back, rewind, play. Yep, I rewound. A little too far. Still some issue there. So I'm going to look. Close enough. We'll jump back to the main screen and we'll move on to the next track, which you get there by just pushing this button. For me, it's going to be bass, and so I'm going to edit the name of this track. And what we've got to do is change this up. So right now it's only showing drums because we're kind of in this drum mode, drum layout mode, which is the grid here that you see. So what we want to do is change into one of the different modes to load up an instrument like a piano or a bass. And so I've switched to plug-in mode. That's one way to get there. And in that mode, right now, instead of using the drum grid type instrument, we're going to use plugins from Air. We're going to go ahead and open the Bassline, Air Music Bassline. Switch to main. And now we can choose. Here we can see that there's a bassline loaded, default setting. Here we can move through the different patches in the bassline sound bank. And this is fine and dandy. This is nice, but at this point you're going to want a MIDI keyboard. You need something to play because you're moving into a chromatic instrument, and so you're really going to need to have a MIDI keyboard controller to start laying down musical parts, bass lines, keyboards, etc. All those things will require a MIDI controller keyboard. Fifth. Octave up on that. So as you start laying in tracks, you can control the volume for each track using this knob number 1. Knob number 2 lets you scroll. You can see here the scrolling bar. Scroll through your sequence depending on the number of measures. The default is, I think, 16 or 8 bars. And this can be changed easily by just selecting and then changing to however many bars you'd like. Is that in addition to the settings for the different drum kits, you also can change to this mode, which brings up the actual pattern for the drums, and you can load those as well. So I'll go ahead and load that pattern. And it warns me that the current sequence is already named and so forth. So it's saying, do you want to go to the next sequence? So I'll say yes to that. And then let's jump back out to main, go to sequence 2, because that is now using this pattern. So check it out. We've got instant drums. can see right away that 120 beat per minute is not where we want to be on that. So let's, if I turn off this little master button, it defaulted back down to 100 beat per minute. So let's try that and see if that sounds better. So now I'll plus down here to the next track, see how many layers we've got here. Okay. So it looks like a lot of this stuff was just samples that are kind of laid out here on this particular drum set. You got the basics, and then we've got, well, let's roll over to the next bank. So I've selected bank B here, and now all of a sudden reveals a whole assortment of samples that have been assigned. Anywhere that there's a color, then that means the sample has been assigned for that pad. Great sounding samples. Absolutely great. Wow, just epic, epic sounds here. So just by loading up that sequence, I can go ahead and make my own if I want to record over that and save it out as a different project. I could go to strip out just those particular events that I don't want. I can see that this is probably down here at the bottom is probably the main drum beat, and then a lot of this stuff up here is the sound effects. So if I wanted to, I could just come in here undo that. Get rid of this stuff. Use the eraser tool. And is that it? So I didn't get all of it, so I'm going to go through and try to find the rest of it. At this point, we'd have to zoom in to kind of take a look at and see what's going on here with these sounds. We can hear what they are. So I think what I've got here, if I solo this track, just the beat, I like it. But let's see. Now if I play from beginning again. So that means I've got a second track that I've just got to either mute. Yeah. There was a bunch of stuff on that second track. Now I could just delete that if I wanted to, go in and zoom out and just get rid of this completely and start over. You can do that. Boom, just use the eraser, get rid of it. Go back to main. Now I've got a cleared up number 2 track here. So I'm set on track 2. I'm going to use the sound effects. I'm going to rewind using this second button to rewind. Then I'm going to go to bank number B, because that's where all my sound effects are for that this page of sound effects on the drums. And I'm going to want to hit record and play. And you can see I've moved into overdub mode immediately, that we've gone into overdub mode. Okay, so I didn't hear anything, so I think maybe I came in early, or the velocity isn't high enough or something. Something didn't happen there. Oh, it was because I had mute. I had it muted, that's why. All right, so let's try that again without the mute turned on. Haha. Hey, sounds pretty good. Let's go on and put another layer on. So I'm going to rewind to beginning, hit overdub, and then get ready. Let that fade out and talk about one of my favorite features in the AKAI MPC family, and that is auto sample. So you get to auto sample by hooking up either a hardware synthesizer like the Roland D50 that I'm showing in the video, or you can also hook up the audio outputs from a software synth like a VST synthesizer that could come from a Mac or a PC computer with an audio interface connected. If you're not sure how to do that, then you'll have to look that up on its own. That's called VST, Virtual Studio Technology Synthesizer, which are software synthesizers that run on either Windows or Apple Mac PCs, equipped with a professional audio interface, USB typically. Well, this is how you do it. From your main screen in the MPC One, you're just going to switch to MIDI mode here, and then you're going to, at this point, switch to sampler mode, and make sure that you've got monitor turned on. Here, monitor is enabled, and then we'll go ahead and jump into the auto sample screen. This is the auto sample screen, and we've got different parameters here. We're going to start with these first two. This is your note range, and generally speaking, I usually go up to from C2 to C5. There are some cases where you will want to go from C1 to C5, or maybe C1 to C6 if you want to pick up a wider range across the keyboard. The note stride is how many note in half steps are between each sample point. So I want to keep my note stride down to about 3 because I want a very realistic sample. If you wanted more realism, you would go down to 2, or you could even do 1. But if you have it set to 1, that means it will sample every note on the keyboard. And that can not only take a while, but it makes huge collection of samples. It takes a lot of storage in memory. And it also takes a lot of memory to load. So I've been also told to have extend minimum maximum notes enabled. So I'm going to leave that. Then we'll jump down to this next screen, next section of the screen. How many velocity layers do I want? So I'm going to just take the top 3, scroll further down, adjust the sample length, time of the sample. So I'm going to go for 5 seconds with a 2.2 second tail. I'm going to name my my synthesizer sample, and then we're going to commit to that name, turn off looping, auto trim start point, and on completion make this the current program. It will tell us how many seconds of total time it will take in terms of the amount, how many notes are being sampled and for how long. And then this is about a moderate, 345 seconds is about a moderate size, I'd say. And then we're going to go ahead and say do it. And at this point you should hear input or sound coming from the synthesizer, and I don't. I'm going to cancel out of that. And you may have to disable or disconnect the MIDI cable that comes the other direction to avoid a MIDI loop situation. So we're going to go back here to MIDI mode on the track, jump back over to sampler, make sure that monitor is turned on and that you're getting a signal when you trigger your keyboard or your MIDI synth, and make sure inputs 1 and 2 are selected. Go to auto sample mode and just make sure that you've named everything, that everything looks the way it should. Inputs 1 and 2 coming from MIDI. Velocity samples are engaged. Let's name this sample. And now we're ready to engage auto sample. Everything is set up. Looping is disabled. Everything looks right. Total of 330 seconds tells me that that's about where I want to be. You don't want to go too high on the number of total number of seconds, because you may end up over the memory limit or causing the samples to become so large that it overloads the memory of the MPC. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that review of the AKAI MPC One. I know I've had a lot of fun working with it, and I find it to be a very useful part of my audio arsenal. Probably the best thing that's come along for me in at least 20 years, I can tell you that. So I hope you, if you do go forward with it, I hope you enjoy your AKAI MPC One or other AKAI products. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video. If you like what you saw, please subscribe to my channel and spread the word about my channel. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.